Good morning. I'm with Steve Patterson, and my name is Kimberly Nassif, and I'm with Fenix Safety Audits. And before I jump into anything else, Stephen, why don't you take a minute to introduce yourself to us?
Sure. Yeah, I'm Steve Patterson. I've been in the sports and entertainment business for 50 years, since I was 10 years old. I actually started answering the phone for the Milwaukee Bucks when I was 10 years old. And I've run the Houston Rockets, the Houston Texans, Portland Trailblazers, Arizona State University, Arizona Coyotes, University of Texas Athletic Department. So, I had a lot of opportunity to be thinking about and working in the venue space and dealing with security and all the operations that go along with that.
Okay. And your company is Pro Sports Consulting, if I'm correct.
Yeah, I head up Pro Sports Consulting. We do a lot of work with government entities and individuals, whether they want to purchase franchises or look at operations for their buildings, run new buildings. We're in the midst right now of negotiating. I'm working on behalf of the city of Charlotte in their negotiations with the Hornets to rebuild their arena down in Charlotte right now.
Okay, great. And how long have you been in YPO?
I've been in YPO, 20 plus, 25 years, I think now.
Okay.
My age. Yeah, I'm a serious gold member now.
I've got 4 years closer to gold, but I think I got in just under the wire. So, well, thank you for spending time with us this morning. I really appreciate it. I know everybody's busy with Zoom calls these days and everything else. So your time is appreciated with us. And thank you for serving on our advisory board as well.
Yeah, happy to do it.
So I just want to ask you a series of 4 to 5 questions, and I would really like your insight and your expertise. So to sort of kick things off, I mean, what is your perspective on COVID and what is going to get us out of it?
I think all along people have been sort of hoping that this thing resolves itself more quickly than it is or is going to. And so I think we need a real focus on the science. I think we need much better and more consistent communications. Mm-hmm. That has to focus around the simple things, masks, hand washing, social distancing, to start getting the trend lines to go down.
Right.
And if we can get the trend lines down, then things can start to open up and we can manage in that environment. But, the reality is, we're 6 to 18 months away from a vaccine and probably 6 to 18 months away from having better treatments. And even once we get a vaccine, you got to see how many people are going to take it and how long it's going to take to get it to the mass of the United States and other countries as we look at operations in other countries.
Right. I was listening to a conference call from the market research space this morning, and one of the things that they mentioned is that the data we have on consumers and how they want to experience things from a year ago needs to be completely thrown out the door. It's useless at this point. Yes. And the other thing is sort of a realigning of how you market to different demographics and sort of the collective trauma that we've gone through globally. The way that we need to be spoken to is different. And the last thing is that there is a long-term consideration that needs to be given to the kids that are sort of living in this right now, the elementary school kids and the high school kids, because their perception of what they're going to want moving forward is forever changed. And I thought those 3 things were very, very powerful.
Yeah, if you look at some of the research, there's a significant segment that is not going to come back till we get a vaccine. Mm-hmm. The segment that is, probably larger, 30, 40, 50%, that if you can show them what you need to show them, they will come back. And then there's probably a quarter to a third that, they're happy with the way things are now and don't think they're going to get it. And they're not worried about it.
Right. You're right. That leads me to my next question as far as, getting people back. We're hearing a lot of new innovation coming from technology and new resources that are sort of rapidly coming to the market. What technology are you seeing, hearing about that, for events, music events, sporting events, large gatherings? Are you hearing anything out there that is sort of, gaining ground or gaining traction to bring people back to safe spaces so that we can watch our sports and watch them in person and not cardboard cutouts?
Yeah, right. Yes, there is, and I think it's going to continue to evolve as we go forward. I mean, certainly you're going to see more temperature checks. You know, certainly you're going to see more spreading out of as you enter buildings, the security that goes along with that. You're going to see ticketless ticketing, so no more hard tickets. It's all going to be on your phone, so no one has to touch and exchange a ticket. In the concession space, you're going to see the same kind of pay with your phone, pay with a credit card that the person behind the counter doesn't have to touch. You're going to see changes in how food's delivered. You know, it's going to be single serving, condiments, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see parking that's virtually all prepaid. I don't think you're going to see any cash parking. And more of that is going to be automated. I think if you look at a lot of the technology that has automated parking payment and assignment to slots, that's growing dramatically right now. You're going to see temperature checks. And I think the next interesting thing is, you know, what's going to go into that ticketless ticketing agreement for contact tracing that allows you to see who really should and shouldn't.
Oh, I think we froze. Let's see. Hold on. I think we froze for a second. Can you hear me?
In the building. And I think you're going to see more. Yeah, you're. Okay.
You froze or I froze. One of us froze.
We can go back.
Yeah, just back up to, I heard the contact tracing, but then you froze for a second. So I want to make sure we get all of that because you were on a good path.
I think you're going to see, you know, in the ticketing agreement, more contact tracing permission. You're going to see more facial recognition cameras and how it's used to contact trace and who should and shouldn't be in the building, and, you know, who may have touched somebody or been in contact with somebody that you find out is infected. So, you know, it's going to be a sea change the same way it was after 9/11, I think.
And do you think that there are two things that I've heard about tying the ticket in order to have access to that digital ticket? You have to show that you've tested negative in the past 72 hours, that you've gone through the CDC health checklist prior to entry, so that there's a higher level of confidence that those who are coming in are going to be in a negative status. I mean, obviously you could get tested and 4 hours later get exposed. Do you see that as being something that that venues will look into?
I do, particularly with the staffs. You know, it's going to be interesting to see how it rolls out with the consumers, but I think for sure with the staffs, and when you're starting to see some of these newer tests that are coming out, you're going to see some announcements here from some of the college conferences and others about, you know, testing that comes back in 15, 17, 18 minutes. So, you know, you're going to come to the venue, and if you haven't tested previously in the last 24 hours, you know, you're going to get a temperature check. You're going to get a swab or a saliva test. And before you go to your station, they're going to know whether you're okay or not for that check.
And what about the tents that people can pass through and get the mist? What do you think about those?
You know, I think it's a bit more show than reality right now. I mean, yeah, I think you may very well see it, but, you know, it's not going to fix somebody that's asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic. Yeah, it'll sort of clean them off on the outside, and consumers may feel better about that, but I'm not yet sure how effective that's going to be for somebody who's asymptomatic and, you know, then steps through and infects folks.
Right. From a risk mitigation standpoint, I mean, obviously all of these things are to help businesses mitigate their risk. They're to help businesses keep the players safe, keep the staff safe, keep the obviously the fans and the event goers coming in, you know, so that they feel safe. You know, how long do you think that we'll be doing this? I mean, from my perspective, again, I go back to that collective trauma that I feel like that we've had. And even if there is a vaccine, it's going to be a while before people feel comfortable taking a vaccine until they know that it's safe. And so how long do you anticipate that we'll, one, be doing these efforts, and two, when do you really feel like this, do you feel like sporting and concerts and these big events are going to come back 2 years, 3 years, 5 years? Will they always be different?
I think it will be some of the last of the businesses to come back to, you know, what we thought of or what we would think of today as sort of the old normal.
Right.
You know, we're probably 6 to 18 months before a vaccine gets here.
Mhm.
And then we're probably, another 18 months till it gets widely distributed and
Right.
accepted in the community. And there's, as we've seen, there's a growing number of people that, don't believe in vaccines. So how are you going to deal with that?
Right.
I don't think anybody thought after 9/11 we'd still this much later, be going through metal detectors and airport searches. And so I think some of the more intrusive technologies, are probably, we're looking at 18 to 36 months.
Right.
After you get to 36 months out, can you be doing enough with facial recognition and contact tracing and rapid testing so that it feels less intrusive? Yeah,
Mhm.
it's probably the case. But I don't think, by next fall, everything's going to be hunky-dory and back to normal.
Right.
It's going to be a longer time lag than that. And so people are going to have to abide by the procedures if we're not going to continue to have jumps and spikes around the country at various events. And so, it's going to be incumbent upon those venues to make sure people stick to the procedures.
Right. And I think that, what you talked about was the beginning of sort of best practices around, the eventing space, or the event space and the sporting space. And, I hear recently of this new term, that the new currency is trust, the new currency is clean, and that, keeping us forever shut down it's not been done before, and it's not a feasible long-term answer. And it's sort of a reevaluation of, with diseases coming up more and more frequently, from West Nile to MRSA to MERS, and now COVID, there will be something next. And I think there will be a collective fear about, are we going to go back on lockdown? So it's sort of building out this epidemic or pandemic toolbox that we need to start putting together, so that when this happens again, if we see a resurgence, if we have to sort of co-live with this virus for 2, 3, 4 years, how does that affect the sporting industry, and what tools does the sporting industry and these venues, what do they need to add to the toolbox that they've not considered before that become new line items?
Right. It's going to be more expensive for venues and teams to operate. I mean, you're going to have to see things like increased cleaning, touchless ticketing, touchless concessions, touchless parking, hand sanitizer stations that are going to have to get filled and operated. Masks on all the fans and staff, certainly in the medium timeline. Social distancing, which means you're going to decrease the amount of people you can have in your venue, and it's going to drive down revenues. I think you're going to have much better communications about what's going on, because it's not just the reality of what happens, it's how people feel about it and how they're being communicated to, the depth of what's going on. I think you're going to see temperature checks, less interactions with staff and with players than minor league baseball. People are used to getting balls from the fan and touching the players and talking to them. Spring training is going to be dramatically different. You're going to see staged exit and entering to the facilities. You're going to see people sitting in pods. So, if you and your family, your kids have all been quarantined at home, and, the 5 of you can go sit together. But other than that, you're going to be 6 feet apart from other folks. I think you're going to see a lot more signage. I think you're going to see a lot more plexiglass, restroom distancing, right? I mean, you're not going to see everybody all lined up at the urinals like they had in the past. You're going to physically have to block off the seats, no tailgating. I don't see that for a significant amount of time. You're going to have to expand the entrances and think about how you're going to keep people 6 feet apart, and how you're going to keep each one of those check stations, whether it's the ticket check, it's the temperature check, what have you.
Pretty check.
Yeah, right. The bag check, everything, so you can come through and stay socially distant. Elevator capacities are going to go down. Escalator capacities are going to go down. So, that really changes how people move in the building and operate. I think you're going to have to see staff that are high risk reassigned to other places or doing their job in a different way. So they can still work, but they're not being in such close contact with people.
Right.
Contact tracing, facial recognition, all those, lots of signage. I think you can see a lot of those kind of changes as people come back to venues.
Right. And yet that sort of leads me to giving consumers, giving fans, comfort that the venues that they're entering in are safe. And, it's not just having these procedures, it's also the messaging about these procedures. It's the evangelization by the team members, by the team itself, by the venue. This is what we're doing, because, people want to know that you're doing something, and the data is starting to show that people will even pay a premium or an inconvenience fee to know that you're doing something, because that message to them is so important. And how do you see the teams being able to do this, these venues being able to do this, outside of saying that they're doing it? What is a good way to message that, so that we're enforcing this, but it's important that you keep your mask on, because when you're sitting there and you're yelling for your team, you don't want to have that mask on. How do you keep that message in a positive manner, evangelize that, and also make sure that it happens? I don't want to use the word enforce, but
It is going to have to be enforced and adhered to. Yeah. I mean,
right.
the reality is, if you look at the research right now, it's telling us that there hasn't been enough communication to significant portions of the fans out there. And there are certainly folks that are more sensitive about it and people that are less sensitive about it. So, you're going to have the kind of communication that's got good content. So video, audio, signage, using the press, using all your own social media. You're going to have to see that it is being enforced, that it's being clean, and somebody's certifying that, showing that it's actually being done. So we can say we've got third parties that are actually checking us to make sure it happens. The fans are going to need to see enforcement when they're in the venues. So, just like you go to the grocery store today and 99% of the people are wearing masks, everybody's looking at the one in the grocery store that's not, right? And so the other part is really the back of the house, right? Are you going through all the procedures for when the staff comes in? The fans don't see that. The customers don't see that generally. But if they are shown it, it'll give them greater confidence that, oh yeah, we checked all the staff, their temperatures, they took a swab, they took a saliva test, people are 6 feet apart, there's plexiglass where they're, making their payments or what have you. There's separation when people are changing uniforms. There's lots of cleaning going on. There's lots of hand sanitizer stations. The restrooms are separated enough so they're sanitary and can stay that way. You're going to need really good content. Lots of video, lots of audio, lots of real live enforcement in the building that people can see when events are going on.
Right. And do you think that there is this, you mentioned the third party audit, which, certainly is something that can happen, where you've got that third party verification coming in to ensure that you're doing all of those things. And from the first party perspective, do you think that there is the diligence and the discipline where not only do you have the third party validating, but you've got that first party where you're using the venue is using their own team members, the sporting team is using their own team members to validate, yes, we're doing this prior to an event, we're doing this during the event, we're doing this post the event, and here is the verifiable proof that we have that, just as part of those communication efforts?
I do. I think it's going to require more training than we necessarily have seen in the past, just like the increased security. And, so just around the changes that came, after 9/11, whether it's putting bollards outside the buildings, whether it's screening people when they're coming through, whether it's clear bags, telling that story with compelling content, video, audio, signage, is going to be important. So people see the training that's going on, the day before the event. They're going to see, how you're cleaning the building. They're going to see how the staff is interacting with each other and with the fan base. You have really clear, consistent, concise communications. We're going to continue to live in this world where we get conflicting, confusing messaging. And in kind of a space, people are not going to emotionally engage.
Right.
In this industry, to be emotionally engaged and feeling safe when they go in the building.
Well, I appreciate all of the information that you've been able to bring to us today. I mean, it sounds like there's definitely a lot of very in-depth thought, conversation, process that's being, discussed, and what that rollout looks like. And I appreciate your sharing time with us as well as your insights. So thank you very much, Steve.
Thank you. You're welcome, Kimberly. Happy to do it.